Good evening, and thank you for being here. I'm Father Matthew Scott. I'm the vicar here at Trinity Church. It's the fancy name we use for priest in charge of a congregation in the Episcopal Church. And I welcome you here. This was supposed to be an outdoor event, and we've kept it in that format. So if it feels awkward, it's because we're supposed to be outside huddled in the cold. We are glad to offer you a warm space for this gathering tonight. And thank you so much. A couple announcements before we get started. First off, there are bathrooms if you need one. You just go out the left door at the back, take a left. And before you reach the closed doors, turn right, and you'll see our bathroom right there for you. Second, we are streaming the service, but I've double-checked. The camera's over here. None of you are visibly focused in the camera, and only this microphone can be heard online, so probably your voices will not be heard yet well. But I need to inform you ahead of time that the room does have a video camera functioning, streaming on the internet for your own safety. The last thing I want to say before we get started is I hope you all would extend a great thank you to Missy Griffin. This is her project, her inspiration, and I'm glad to have been brought in to help. And Trinity is glad to help host it and because of the weather here. But really, she deserves so much credit, and she's going to get a chance to lead part of today's service as well, or today's gathering as well. But make sure to take time to say thank you to Missy. Thank you, Missy. We're going to start with an invocation of prayer together, and then we're going to hear some bagpipes call our hearts and souls to the space as we gather in vigil. So I invite you to bow your heads and share in meditating on your concept of holiness as I offer these words for us tonight. O God, whose mercies never cease, even in the face of mysteries and tragedies that defy our understanding, please join us tonight as we remember. Comfort the weary, console the grieving, bring understanding to the confused, and bring companionship to all of us who feel alone. In so doing, point us toward hope, that by what we do tonight becomes a foundation for our tomorrows. Remind us that it's never wrong to be sad, to be weary, to be hurt. For in giving us hearts that feel such things, you intended for us to be whole with them, not in spite of them. And so through tonight and what extends beyond, bind us together as a community, tending to wounds and drawing on strengths, so that from us a blessing can move out to our community and to our world. We offer all this to you. Amen. And now Bob Carlson will grace us with music from the pipes. A few comments for us as we gather in vigil. Tonight, I pray that you find a space to acknowledge whatever is going on in your heart, and it can be many things. We are too often invested in trying to convince ourselves that what our heart is saying is not real. Many would say, and perhaps even you hear voices in your head say this, that the pandemic is ending and we should just put this behind us and forget it. Luckily, I believe, we are built with hearts that know a different truth. Hopefully it is ending. Hopefully we are reaching the end of this long sojourn in fear and in worry and in illness. That spring is bringing us its blessing of hope. But our hearts tell us that something is still wrong. We are still hurting. And that hurt leads to all sorts of responses from our hearts. So know that wherever you are welcome here. If you have lost a loved one due to COVID, either directly or indirectly, you know full well that grief does not end on some timetable that you get to set. So may tonight be another piece in the work of finding solace and comfort. Know that we will not forget. If you have not lost someone and yet still find yourself here and maybe wondering why, drawn by something you cannot name, let me name it for you. You too are grieving and mourning. The experience of this pandemic has taught us the truth that we are intensely social beings. And we too often underappreciate those interactions we've had with one another. But for 2 years now of strained relationships, I think we all now know we need each other. We rely on each other. Those even random encounters matter to our lives. And then, when you have had the chance to encounter someone, often you meet those who've been dramatically affected by this illness, those who have lost, neighbors and friends. You've met medical workers, teachers, and others who've been stressed beyond breaking points. You've experienced your jobs and social groups irrevocably changed. What may be hard to accept is that this suffering and loss is ours too, whether we've lost a close loved one or not. We are all grieving. Does not take away the suffering of those who have lost someone, who've been, quote unquote, directly affected. Remember, we are built for relationship. If one suffers, we all do. COVID's impact us as a people and as a community is dramatic and is traumatic. And so there's no feeling you can have that's wrong. Sad because of all we've lost. Angry at how things should have been different. Disgust at the reality revealed through this sojourn. Maybe also a piece of you is happy. Increased family time. More quiet, a reprieve from the chaos of life before. These are all feelings that are okay. What I offer you tonight from the church's perspective is that the grace we may find together is in the work of lamenting. Western culture emphasizes overcoming obstacles and getting on with life at all costs. If you're hurting, heal as fast as you can and get back at it. But other cultures, including the ancient world from which the Bible arose, understood that there's a time and space needed for lamentation, to let our hearts catch up with our will. There's actually a whole book of the Bible called Lamentations. It's from the Hebrew scriptures. We're told that the prophet Jeremiah wrote it after Israel and Jerusalem fell, more than 500 years before Jesus came. The Babylonian Empire overthrew their country, sent a majority of the residents into exile in far-off lands, and the people, stripped of home, country, and family, grieved. And the prophet Jeremiah spoke to all of the feelings they encountered. I quote just one small section of this work that is difficult to read if you're not lamenting. It's from the 3rd chapter of Jeremiah's Lamentations. The thought of my affliction and my homelessness is wormwood and gall. My soul continually thinks and is bowed down within me. But even in this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Jeremiah found in acknowledging his heart and soul, his deep hurt, and offering words to a community in similar places, found a paradox that in the midst of it is hope. That when we turn toward our pain and share it with one another, a new light begins to grow. Maybe it's not surprising then that Jeremiah's lamentations began to be used every year in a cycle of seasons. There's a time to lament. The lesson was learned that hearts that are hurting need space to breathe, to contend with disappointments, upsets, and tragedies. And we have to do this regularly. Lamenting keeps us connected to one another as a community, and connected heart, soul, and mind. And in that, we begin to heal. So tonight, we lament. We pause, we let our hearts catch up to us. No matter what you believe about the last 2 years or what you're worried about or hopeful for in the ones to come, take tonight to see the people sitting next to you, the people who live all around us, to see yourself, and to appreciate that we are here. We have come together. We have suffered and are suffering, and we are together. And so our first act in this, then, is to remember those who are not with us. 207 souls who no longer are with us here in Warren. In a moment, candles will start to be lit, and after the last one is lit, we will sit in silence for 207 seconds, 1 second for each life. Macy's going to light the candles. Good. Okay. May we sit in silence and remember. We will always remember them. I'm going to invite Missy Griffin on up, and she's going to lead us in a call and response.
Thank you. We remember them by Sylvan Kamens and Rabbi Jack Reimer. Thank you. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, in the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of the summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we crave to share, we remember them. When we have a decision that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. For as long as we live, they too will live. For now they are a part of us as we remember them. Thank you.
Say a few words? You are welcome to leave your candles lit for as long as you want, but we're now going to turn our attention to some others in our community who also deserve our praise and thanks for their work and how COVID has affected them, and that is our emergency service workers and first responders. And we're blessed to have Donnie Rossi here with us to speak a few words. He is the chief of the Spring Creek Volunteer Fire Department, and we're so blessed to have you here. Please.
Thank you for hosting this event tonight. Thank you for just letting us be inside. It would be a lot more like firefighting if we were outside right now. And so it is good to be inside this evening. I'm here because Joni Smitley is not here. She is, as you can imagine, somewhere in the world, helping people that desperately need a lot of help in our prayers. And so she mentioned me as someone that could possibly fill in. She serves as my EMS captain in the Spring Creek Volunteer Fire Department and a lot of other roles in the community. So I definitely want to recognize her tonight as she cannot be here, and I'm just filling her shoes. Yes, I'm the fire chief of the Spring Creek Volunteer Fire Department. It's my first year in that specific role, and I've been volunteering on and off since I was about 15 years old. And my notes here tonight are going to center a little bit more on the fire and EMS group within the county and stuff like that. But I'm happy to join you this evening to honor those that have served during these past several years now. I remember sitting in the 911 center where this whole thing started, wondering what was going to happen. A lot of uncertainty. We prepared, we hunkered down, and we waited. Businesses fed kids that could not get to school for lunches. Businesses ran discounts for first responders. Places donated masks and supplies to our local hospital. At first, actually, the calls dropped. We ran less calls during those early times as people were hesitant even to call. But there was definitely a community spirit, and that thrived. We prepared, but we did not have a massive wave during that first part of this pandemic. We watched as other areas had waves and a lot of negative effects because of this terrible disease. We were frightened by the layoffs. We wondered about the future, but actually here it was a little bit quiet. And maybe for a moment in summer of 2020, we thought we might be heading towards the end of it. But that was not the case. Cases rose, call volumes rose, hospital visits increased. Many of us lost friends. And to make matters worse, there were shortages for the people that we needed to run many of these calls. But the healthcare workers, the firefighters, the EMTs, and really everyone worked hard to work past these difficulties, past these sad moments, and these hard days as they worked on the front lines of this pandemic. And again, this past winter, we experienced the largest wave of all. At this point, many were affected in more and more direct ways. It was supposed to be over by now. And at moments like these, we stop and mourn for those that have passed away during this time. I think of my friend Lawrence Lehman, whose wife passed away of this terrible disease this past winter. And he has faithfully served in our department for longer than I have been there. And there's others that have been affected. And so I commend you for coming to an event like this, just to stop and to recognize what has happened. We should never forget. We should never forget. But we not only look back, we want to look at some of the current difficulties for frontline workers and volunteers that we're experiencing now. Even things like the gas prices, things really hit my volunteers. It's that much more expensive to go run that fire call or that EMS call than it was just a couple months ago. And for this reason and the difficulties that we face and the need that we have, I'm going to ask you a question this night, and maybe if others are watching as well, that you would consider joining the fire and EMS crews in Warren County. We need loggers, we need lawyers, we need dentists, we need dog walkers, we need politicians, we need plumbers, we need farmers, we need framers, we need pipe fitters, we even need company presidents. We need all types. We need all skills represented in the fire and EMS services. We need, frankly, we need you. We need pastors. Anyone can serve. At one time in Pennsylvania, can you imagine, there are over 300,000 volunteer firefighters in this state. Today, there is only about 30 to 38,000 volunteers in the state. We need your help. We need you. And Warren County is affected by this shortage. It is a life or death situation, and it will go on past this. It just, moments like these bring it more to the forefront. When it's harder, and when people have gone through such a hard thing, it could be harder to have people re-engage and keep doing this, what can be sometimes a difficult job. We need people to pull hose, to drive trucks, to direct traffic, to hand out coffee, to sweep floors, to apply for grants, to be EMTs, to run chainsaws, to volunteer for just about every job you can imagine. There isn't hardly anyone that cannot help in this community cause. So please consider not only how you can honor these dear people, but how you can join them. I promise it will make you better citizens. It will teach you things you never thought imaginable. And you will see the needs of this community in a whole nother way. And trust me, just as someone who's been running in my local community, and I moved here a long time ago in 2000 from Virginia, and I was a volunteer in Virginia for a while, and I wasn't here until somebody in Spring Creek said, "Hey, will you join?" And I had my firefighter 1 and been an EMT at that point, and it's a chore. And I tell you, over the years that I've run, and you get back into the haulers and some of the back roads, and you see some of the need, you realize it's right here. It's in our county. There's people that have terrible situations, and this is just a little way that we can help. But I don't know that you understand, and that's why as a fire chief, I wanted to explain that we need all kinds of people. When we had the terrible fire over at the mill in Sparty, Clear Lake. It was the largest fire I've ever been to in that realm. You know, there's people handing out food, handing out coffee, bringing a warm place for fire and EMS crews to get inside. It's really something anybody can do. So I just want to challenge tonight, as we remember these first responders, that they also need your help. They also need your help. But I do know that the first responders will keep responding, and I'm excited about that. But they could use your help. So thank you. Thank you for gathering. Thank you for taking a moment. It is meaningful, and it will be noticed by the volunteers that have served in this community. And that it does extend past just fire and EMS crews, though that's what I know, to nurses that are in the hospital, to doctors, to teachers. Almost everybody is on the front line in some capacity, and who's not essential. So thank you. Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you, Donnie, for your continued service. And you're right, we need everybody. We do. And I know it feels like we're in a church and it has to be all formal, but please do clap for one another and celebrate one another's presence here tonight. So it's great. Just going to take a few minutes before we close. I'm going to offer a benediction for you all, a good words blessing upon you as we continue on with our lives and our days. Never forgetting, but always remembering and taking the lessons we've learned and going forward in new and powerful ways for one another. Following the blessing, we'll have our bagpipes once again play for us. And then I'm inviting you to stay as long as you wish here in this space. And I'm going to ask folks to please try to leave as quietly as you can to respect those who choose to stay. And you are welcome to stay and rest here to pray in whatever capacity you have and to continue to hold vigil in your heart and in your life. So again, I'm going to invite you to bow your heads in whatever capacity you feel and to hold holiness in your hearts as I offer this benediction for you all. Oh God, we come before you and thank you for gathering us together, for reminding us of our connection one to another, for helping us hear again our call to serve and to serve one another in powerful ways. And so now to those of you who are gathered, may you know the blessing and consolation of the one to whom all things rely. In grief and mourning we are not alone, but joined by those throughout time and space who seek hope, not by denying their pain, but by sharing it together in community. In this, we make visible the blessing of the one who joins us in all things and unites us in their love. And we pray this all in their holy name. Amen.